All right, chat. For anyone new here, my name's Riker. Full-time content machine, part-time hiker, and tonight, your tour guide into nightmare country. I grinned, leaning into the frame. We're hunting the Wendigo. Yeah, the big guy himself. The stream had barely been live for 5 minutes, and I was already in full performance mode. Sunlight spilled through the tree line in streaks of gold, catching the edge of my sunglasses and throwing flares into the lens. Perfect lighting. Perfect moment. I turned the phone so the audience could get the full shot. A dirt trail snaking into dark pines. A faded wooden sign creaking in the breeze. Then I swung it back to my face. I slowed my pace, letting the crunch of my boots carry under my words. For those living under a rock, here's the quick lore dump. The Wendigo comes from Algonquian legends. Think northern forests, brutal winters. It's a spirit, a monster, whatever you want to call it. Tall, gaunt, skin stretched like old leather, and a face you don't want to see twice. They say it used to be human, until it got a taste for human flesh. Once that happens, it's over. Hunger takes over, and you get this thing. A crow called somewhere overhead, its voice sharp in the cooling air. I didn't look up. Folklore says it's fast, strong, smarter than you think, and once it notices you, game over. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't quit. You either freeze to death running or it catches you. Fun stuff, right? I smirked, stepping over a root. But here's the thing. It's also total nonsense. No one's ever gotten clear proof. And that's where I come in. I angled the phone toward the trail again. We're not doing the tourist Windigo thing tonight. No creepy picnic tables. No roped-off campgrounds. I've got the real map. I spent 2 nights cross-referencing missing persons reports, forest density charts, and old sighting stories that don't make it to the news. This place hits all 3. Chat messages flickered across the screen. I laughed at one. Yeah, the vest is sponsored. No, I'm not trying to be Bear Grylls. This is just so the footage looks pro when I roast whatever raccoon I end up finding. I see you guys spamming skull emojis and R.I.P. Riker. Very funny. Some of you think this is all fake. And one of you, user BloodHunger33, just told me not to play games I can't finish. Real reassuring thanks. The dirt trail sloped into the trees. The canopy swallowed the last of the warm light, replacing it with cool resin-scented air. I patted the whistle tied to my vest strap. Fully kitted. GoPro, GPS, power banks, beef jerky, and of course a whistle. You know, in case we need to invite the boys out to play. Look, I'm not saying I believe, but the air's colder than it should be. No wind, no bugs, no sound at all. Like the woods are waiting. I know you can't feel it through the screen. If you were standing here with me, you'd get it. Every instinct in my body says I shouldn't be here. Still, you came to see something happen, and I came out here for proof. So here's the plan. I'll head deeper in, find a clearing, and then we'll see if the stories are just stories. You want folklore? I'll give you folklore. If there's really something starving out here, then maybe we'll catch it on camera. But before I start, let's make it clear. If I disappear or something drags me off, don't go calling me an idiot. Call me what I really am, a legend in the making. This, I told them as I stepped into the shadows, is when the content gets good. The deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to swallow the light. The gold from the sunset had drained away, replaced by a muted gray-blue haze. Every step sounded louder here, Every crunch of pine needles felt like it carried for miles. Man, if this was a horror movie, I told Chat. This is the part where some dude trips and breaks his ankle before the monster even shows up. I panned the camera in a slow sweep. But lucky for you guys, I'm not some dude. A faded metal sign hung crooked on a nearby tree. Its edges were rusted, words barely legible under chipped red paint. Do not enter. I stepped closer, angling the phone so Chat could get a good look. Uh-oh, Chat. The NPC rangers don't want us in the final boss area. I gave it a mock salute and kept walking. The trail narrowed, roots twisting across the dirt like veins. A gust of wind rattled the branches overhead. For a second, it almost sounded like something moving, but I brushed it off. I called out into the trees, voice carrying through the stillness. Skinwalker! I grinned at the camera. Yeah, still nothing. Guess they're camera shy. A few minutes later, I spotted it. The first talisman. An elk skull. Bleached bone lashed with strips of sinew into a crude dream-catcher frame hanging from a low branch. The empty socket stared straight at me. I crouched to get it in frame. And there we have it, folks. Peak Etsy core horror decor. Probably made by some LARP group that got lost on the way to the Ren Fair. I gave the skull a little tap with my knuckle. It felt light, hollow, like it had been hanging here long enough for the weather to strip it clean. Nothing dangerous about it. Just another prop for the camera. Chat spammed theories, curses, hunters marking territory, Blair Witch cosplay. I kept walking, whistling a short, sharp note just to keep them stirred up. You guys remember that TikTok thing? Whistling at night brings them out? Yeah. Let's see what happens. The forest thickened around me. Trunks loomed tall and straight, blocking out what was left of the light. My GPS said the trail was barely here anymore. Perfect. All right, Chat, I said, flashing the grin again. We are officially in VIP forest access mode. No tourists, no signs of life, and no Wendigos yet. But hey, the night's young. By the time I glanced at the sky again, the sun was gone. The forest wasn't just dim now, it was dark. Deep, swallowing black in every direction. My flashlight beam cut through it in a tight column, catching dust motes and the occasional moth drifting past. The air had gone still. No rustle of wind, no hum of insects. Just my boots, the faint hiss of the stream feed, and my own breathing. I forced a laugh for Chat. All right, now we're talking. Prime Windigo hours. Something cracked in the distance. It was sharp, like a twig snapped on purpose. I swung the flashlight toward the sound but saw only the crowded lines of pine trunks. Okay, Chat, place your bets, deer or demon. A low roar rolled through the trees, far off but deep enough to vibrate in my chest. The chat exploded in emojis in all caps. I grinned, heart pounding faster than I wanted to admit. Guess we're going toward it, huh? That's what you're here for. The GPS on my phone jittered, the little blue dot skipping across the map like it couldn't decide where I was. 1 second it had me near the highway, the next in the middle of a lake miles away. I tilted the screen toward the camera. Yeah, that's totally normal. Technology loves me. Another sound ahead, a branch snapping, closer this time. I picked up the pace, light bouncing over the uneven ground. That's when I saw it. The pale curve of an elk skull peeking out from behind a tree. My chest tightened, breath catching. I stepped closer, beam locking onto it, only to find it hanging from a branch by frayed cord. Just another talisman. I laughed, too loud, and shook my head. Nice try, boys. But the echo of that roar was still in my bones. The deeper I pushed, the more the darkness seemed to press against me, as if the forest itself had closed ranks. My flashlight swept over the forest floor, catching roots like coiled snakes, jagged stones, the odd glint of damp leaves. But no movement I could pin down. Then, a whistle drifted through the trees. High, thin, so faint it almost didn't register. I froze mid-step. Another whistle answered from the opposite direction. Then a third, closer than either of the others, cutting straight into my ears. My skin prickled under my jacket. The hair on my neck lifted. Something brushed the back of my pack. Hard. Not enough to knock me over, but enough to jolt me forward like I'd been shoved. I spun around, flashlight slicing through black air. Nothing. Yeah. Guess the wind's got hands now, I muttered, forcing the joke even as my voice cracked. Clip that, chat. That was something. Movement flickered just outside the beam, a tall, thin silhouette darting between the trees in a blur that made my stomach drop. I swung the light, but it was already gone. A rock landed at my feet with a muted thud, scattering pine needles. Chat, I am not alone out here. That wasn't a raccoon. No shot. Somewhere ahead, a massive tree groaned and crashed down, the impact shaking the ground beneath me. Bark stung my arm, showering me in splinters. My breathing went ragged, too loud in the stillness. Okay, that almost killed me. And yes, before you ask, we're still going forward because apparently I'm insane. Then, my name. Riker. The voice stretched unnaturally, warped, and it sounded like mine. The echo clung to the trees before melting into low, wet laughter. Nope. Not a fan of that one, chat. Whoever's out here gets 0 stars. I turned and froze. A talisman hung from a branch just ahead. Same one I'd passed earlier. My gut twisted hard. Wait. That's... no way. We've been here already. Have I been walking in circles? Something growled right in my ear, deep enough to vibrate in my ribs. I spun wildly, light shaking in my grip, but there was nothing. The sound stayed with me long after it stopped, settling into my bones like the forest had breathed it straight into me. Chat, seriously, what the hell is happening right now? The whistle didn't come back. The growl didn't either. The forest settled into a silence so thick it felt like sound itself had been pulled out of the air. I kept talking anyway, if only to fill the space. Okay. Chat. I think I just set the new high score for heart rate. Anybody still with me? No replies. The scrolling wall of comments was gone. My viewer count sat at 0. I stopped walking, tilting the phone toward my face. Very funny. Did the app crash? Or are you all just bailing on me now? A minute ago, I'd been performing. Now my voice felt smaller, thinner. I turned in a slow circle, light brushing over the same repeating pattern of trunks and shadows. Okay, I need to head back. We'll just call this one early. The path didn't look familiar. Every step brought me to more of the same. I tried marking a tree with my knife, turned around 30 seconds later, and saw the same mark, only deeper, older, like someone had carved it before me. Something rustled ahead. I raised the light, ready for another talisman. But it wasn't that. I was holding a branch, not my selfie stick. Not my phone. Just a snapped, splintered branch clutched in my hand like I'd been carrying it for hours. My stomach dropped. My phone. Where's my phone? Voices slid through the dark. Not whistles this time. Words. They twisted my own lines back at me in jagged, sing-song tones. Chat. Seriously, one voice crooned, stretching the words until they warped. Another chuckled, spitting out, "Chat, I'm not alone," with a sharp, guttural laugh at the end. Each repetition sounded more alien, more wrong, bending my words until they barely resembled human speech. I stumbled backward, pulse hammering, the beam shaking as my grip went slick with sweat. I called out, but there was no one to answer. No chat, no audience. Just me, alone, and the forest breathing in around me. The voices stopped all at once, leaving the dark heavy and breathless. My flashlight flickered, dimmed, then steadied, and in that weak circle of light something shifted. 2 points of pale reflection blinked back at me. Too high to be a deer, too still to be human. They vanished when I blinked, only to reappear a few feet closer. I stepped back and the ground felt uneven beneath me, like the forest floor was tilting toward them. Whispers rose from all sides, some pitched low like murmurs through a wall, others sharp and bright like someone laughing right next to my ear. Every now and then, one used my voice. The light flickered again. This time, the gaps between flashes stretched just long enough for the shapes in the dark to move. Each time it came back, they were closer. Lean forms in the periphery, bending wrong, with antlered silhouettes that swayed without wind. I turned and ran. Roots caught at my boots, branches whipped my face, and still the whispers stayed with me, pacing me. I could hear the thump of something heavy hitting the ground behind me, steady, patient, not rushing. It didn't need to. A talisman swung into view ahead, fresh meat still dripping from the bone. The smell hit me, copper and rot. My stomach clenched. The forest thinned suddenly, spilling me into a narrow clearing. I thought for a heartbeat I'd made it, until I saw them ringed around me just beyond the light. Tall, gaunt, antlers curling like blackened roots, eyes catching the beam, glowing faintly. The flashlight sputtered one last time and went out. In the dark, I heard them step forward as one. The sound was slow, like they were closing the distance only to enjoy how long it would take before I couldn't run anymore. The darkness pressed close, thick enough to feel against my skin. Something brushed my arm. Cold, almost brittle. And the whispers came back, but not from the trees. They were inside my head now, threading through my thoughts, pulling pieces of me apart. Hands clawed and bone-thin seized my shoulders. My feet left the ground as they dragged me backward, my flashlight tumbling away. Branches clawed at me as we moved fast, far too fast for anything human. The forest tilted and twisted until I was thrown hard onto cold stone. A shape loomed in the darkness. Then another. Antlers scraped the ceiling as they crowded close. My wrists and ankles were bound with strips of sinew, rough and unyielding. The air stank of rot, damp fur, and something metallic. Blood, old and thick. From the shadows, a figure approached holding a crude wooden bowl. Inside, chunks of meat steamed in the cold air. The smell was overpowering, nauseating, and yet, my mouth watered. I shook my head, but claws gripped my jaw, forcing it open. The first bite burned going down, filling me with a heat that wasn't mine. The second bite was easier. The third I took willingly. My skin itched, stretched, fingers cramped as nails blackened and curled. My breath came in sharp bursts, each one fogging the air with a strange, heavy steam. Hunger bloomed in my chest, deep and endless, erasing the edges of who I was. Somewhere inside, the last part of me that was Riker screamed. But it was faint now, muffled under the sound of cracking ice and snapping bone. When the restraints were cut, I didn't stand so much as unfold. My joints felt wrong, My limbs too long. Something heavy and cold was lowered over my head. An elk skull. Its bone pressing against my temples. The hollow sockets aligning with my new eyes. The moment it settled into place, the hunger inside me pulsed, and a strange sense of completion washed over me. The cave smelled of prey, and my new eyes saw the heat of it everywhere. I stepped into the night, the snow crunching under claws. The forest didn't just welcome me. It was mine.